Hi class, today we're going to start chapter 7, and our first section is going to be on ratios and proportions. Our objectives today are to write ratios and to write and solve proportions. So before we begin, we need an algebra review, and this will come up later in our lesson today. So first let's try multiplying the binomials using the FOIL method. So if you remember, FOIL stands for first, outside, inside, and last. All right, so our first two terms get multiplied, so that's going to give us x squared. Our second ones are going to be our outside terms, and then that's going to give us 5x. Now, if you look at this problem, all we've done is just distributed that x, the first term, to the second set of parentheses. So now we're going to go ahead and multiply by 2 by x, and then we're going to do our last, which is 2 times 5. So we get 10. If we go ahead and combine like terms here, which end up being our two middle terms, we get x squared plus 7x plus 10. So if you go ahead and finish 2 and 3 for us for tomorrow, that'd be great. Again, here now these next three problems, it says solve for x. We have two ways of doing this. One works most of the time and one works every time. So the one that works most of the time is going to be to factor. And the second one is going to be the quadratic formula. Which our quadratic formula, I taught most of you, it's 2 pop goes the weasel, opposite b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Sorry to disappoint if I didn't sing it for you, but we can do that in class if you'd like. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this first one. I'm going to give it a try to see if we can factor. Ooh, before we get going, the one thing that we do need to make sure with either factoring or quadratic formula is that our problem is always set equal to 0. If it's not, move those terms over and get it equal to 0. So I'm going to use this big X. Remember, we want it to multiply to our end term and add to our middle term. Now if I'm looking here, they both are positive, so two numbers that multiply to a positive and add to a positive are both going to be positive. Multiply to 14 and add to 9 is going to give me 2 and 7. So we can go ahead and use our little shortcut and go right into x plus 2, x plus 7. And don't forget that equals 0. That equals 0 tells us that we're going to use our zero product property, or ZPP, and set each of these equal to 0. So set each set of parentheses equal to 0 and make its own problem. So minus the 2, so we get x equals negative 2. And here we're going to minus the 7, so we get x equals negative 7. Go ahead and try 5 and 6. You can try them by factoring or by quadratic formula if factoring doesn't work. Remember to set them equal to 0. All right, so let's go ahead and get going into our notes for the day and talk about a ratio. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities using division. And there are multiple ways to write this, 3 to be exact. So we could have 2 to 3. We could have 2 to 3, or we could actually have 2 written out to 3. All three of those are going to represent the same thing. All right, a baseball player's batting average is the ratio of the number of base hits to the number of at-bats, not including walks. Joe Mauer had the highest batting average in 2006 in Major League Baseball. If he had 521 official at-bats and 181 hits, find his batting average. So we were told that it's going to be base hits to at-bats. And if we look, we have 181 hits and 521 official at-bats. So we're going to put our 181 on top and our 521 on bottom. Now, if you know anything about baseball, you'll know that we don't leave this in a batting average and a fraction. We're going to actually change it into a decimal. And that decimal is going to be 347. Typically, I ask you guys to round to 1 decimal place, but batting average we leave in 3 decimal places. All right, sometimes ratios can compare more than two numbers. This is called an extended ratio. So for example, we could have A to B to C. And if we have an extended ratio, we can always break it down into three individual ratios. A to B, which is our first two quantities, B to C, which is our second two quantities, and A to C, which is going to be our first and our last quantities. So let's go ahead and put this ratio to some geometry. The ratio of the measure of angles in a triangle ABC is 3 to 4 to 5. Find the measures of the angles. Well, we do know one thing is that angles, all three angles in a triangle, add up to equal 180. And we know that this one is going to be 3 times something. This one will be 4 times something, and this one will be 5 times something. Now you can put them in any of the angles because it doesn't matter which one is specific. So we're going to take 3x plus 4x plus 5x, and that's going to add up to our 180. So if we go ahead and add those, we get a 12x equals 180, and divide both sides by 12, and we find our x to equal 15. Now, 15 is not one of our angles, but if we plug 15 back in for x in all of those, we're going to find our angles. So I'm just going to do 3 times 15, 4 times 15, and 5 times 15. Go ahead and take a moment, plug that into your calculator, and go ahead and put your answers into the blanks. Angle 1, 3 times 15, we get 45. Angle 2, 4 times 15, ends up being 60. Oh, and these are degrees because we are actually talking about angles. And then the last one, 5 times 15, gives us 75 degrees. All right, so number 3 says in a triangle, the ratio of the measures of the sides, so we're talking about sides this time, last time we talked about angles, is 3 to 3 to 8. And the perimeter is 392 inches. Find the lengths of all three sides of the triangle. All right, so we're going to call one side 3x, another one 3x, and the bottom one 8x. Now these are representing the measures of each side, and it says actually the perimeter, which remember, perimeter is when you add up all the sides, is equal to 392. So go ahead and take your 3x plus your 3x plus your 8x and set it equal to 392 and solve for those side measures for tomorrow. Number 4, the number of students that participate in the sports programs at Central High School is 520. The total number of students in the school is 1,850. Find the athlete to student ratio. So this problem is going to be similar to the Joe Mauer batting average problem. So go ahead and finish this up for tomorrow. All right, number 5. Jane jogs the same path every day in the winter to stay in shape for track season. She runs at a constant rate. She spends a total of 39 minutes jogging. If the ratio of the times of her 4 legs is 3 to 5 to 1 to 4, how long does the second leg of the jog take? So first we need to find out how much that each individual one will take. So we're just going to throw an X in with each leg. And those total are going to be 39 minutes. So if I add up all my x's, I get 13x equals 39. So x equals 3. So go ahead and take that 3, and now we're going to look for our second leg, which is right there. So we're just going to plug 3 in with that. So the second leg takes 15 minutes. All right, so let's go ahead and talk now about proportions since we just finished talking about ratios. A proportion is two ratios that are equal. And so we've dealt with proportions in algebra. And when you solve proportions, you're going to cross multiply. Most of the time, the step that immediately happens after cross multiply is going to be that and divide. All right, so let's go ahead. Here's 3 problems, and let's look at our first one. So we're going to cross multiply each of these. And so 5 times 12 gives us 60, and 8 times x gives us 8x. So here's our cross multiply. And see, we don't have anything else to do, so we're just going to go jump right to the and divide part and take out that 8. And then we're going to end up with 7.5 for x. Now, in 7 and 8, the next step won't immediately be the and divide. So if we cross multiply, you need to take that 2 and times it by the whole quantity of x minus 2. And you need to do the same thing here with the 4. When you do problem 8, you're going to be taking your 2 quantities here and putting them in parentheses and multiplying. Come with those done for tomorrow. And then the last one is going to be a word problem proportion, and I have faith that you guys will come through with this one done for tomorrow also. We'll see you then.